Okay, hi everyone. So we've got a good crowd here tonight. I just wanted to get us started here. First of all, thank you for being here. I know there's several other meetings going on, and I appreciate you being here. So this is the first installment of Civic Engagement 101. It's brought to you by Lawrence Public Library and the League of Women Voters of Lawrence and Douglas County. I'm Kate Gramlich, she, her, hers pronouns. I am the Community Resource Specialist for Lawrence Public Library, and this monthly series it's focused on teaching us how to be more engaged citizens. I just wanted to remind you that Lawrence Public Library and League of Women Voters are both nonpartisan, and so our talks are going to be looking at local structure of government, not current policy or current officials. So keep that in mind when you're engaging with the Q&A. And here we have Tracy Matthews from League of Women Voters, and then she will pass it along.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tracy Matthews, as Kate said, from League of Women Voters. I'm on the board of directors. I have been a Lawrence resident for 6 years now. I moved here to teach university, healthcare management specifically, and have since left that field, and I'm a realtor for Keller Williams Integrity here in town. So I have a bit of a background in some of this, but I am passionate about getting people and getting out to vote. So I want to also then pass it on to Courtney. I have a little bit of an introduction to Courtney. Courtney is currently a city commissioner. She has served on the chair of Lawrence Association of Neighborhoods. She has served on the Board of Zoning Appeals, as well as the advisory board for the Transient Guest Tax Grant Program, Lawrence Preservation Alliance, and Friends of Oak Hill Cemetery. She is a 30-year resident of Lawrence, so she has a few years on me as far as residency. Courtney graduated from the University of Kansas with a degree in Slavic languages and literatures and currently works as a property manager. So she's going to tell us all the things about local government this evening. So thanks, Courtney.
Thank you so much, Tracy. It's good to see you again. I haven't seen you in a while. And thank you, of course, to the League for inviting me to do this. But I will jump right in, partly because I've never shared my screen before and I want to see how that goes. So, as she said, I am a city commissioner. I've only been there since December. Here we go. Oh, this is so exciting, guys. Sorry, I'm learning technology. Yay. So since Lawrence is, the city of Lawrence is my focus, I'm going to kind of start there and I'll just show you this little infographic we've got about what the city does. And then I'll show you a flow chart here in a second. I will say there's a little bit out of date here, which is that Public Works here. I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but Public Works and Utilities were combined into something called MSO. Which may not mean much to you, but it created a little confusion at first, but I think in the long run, it's going to be better for us. So things that affect you if you live here, obviously water, wastewater, stormwater, trash pickup, every park and trail you would like to go on, planning and development. Those are things obviously Tracy might be really interested in and have a lot of knowledge about. Transit and fire and medical and police. So let me show you this little infographic. Oh, good, you can see it. This is also a little out of date. It doesn't have quite the right people up here. And Public Works and Utilities is one department, as I said, but you still get the idea. So I just want to talk for a split second about City Commission and how it works. There's 5 city commissioners. I guess I would say they're a team of equals. We do have a mayor, but it's not what they call a strong mayor system. So they don't, the mayor may not make giant sweeping changes the way that the mayor of New York or Chicago might be able to, because we have to consult with each other and have meetings in public. Then the city manager takes direction from us and then filters it all the way down to all the different departments. So I guess what I think of when I talk to people is like, what does that mean for you and how do you get a hold of people? Let's see if I can pull up our website here for a second. You can go to our website, of course, and find anything you want to find. What you don't find, I do want to say, this gentleman right here, Porter O'Neill, he will help you. He's the director of communications. In fact, he has 3 different jobs. But if you can't find the person you're looking for or the expert you're looking for and whatever your question is, call him and he'll help you get directed. And if you still have a hard time, you should definitely call us. But before I get to that part, I'll go to my slides here. Hopefully you guys can see this. So when you talk about local government, right, we have the city of Lawrence, where probably most of us live, but we're within Douglas County, and Douglas County has Lawrence, Baldwin, Eudora, Lecompton. These are townships that probably some of us has never heard of. And I just like to bring that up because, especially when we talk here in a minute about the county, while Lawrence is the still point of the turning earth for me, I do need to recognize that there are all kinds of people that live in the county. They have different lifestyles. Some of them are agricultural. They make that choice. That's where they want to live. They want to be represented by the choices that they make. So I just always like to point that out to people in Lawrence. We tend to be a little Lawrence-centric sometimes. I apologize that I don't have very dynamic slides, everyone. I am not a graphic designer. So we have the city of Lawrence, we have the Douglas County, right, all of us are in. I kind of put some of these things on here. Kate asked if I would sort of just talk a little bit about things that might show up on your ballot. Probably a lot of you are already very knowledgeable about that, but some of you might not be. Douglas County Commissioners, there are 3 of them. I think 2 of them are up this year for re-election. The sheriff also is up at this time. The district attorney is also up for Judicial District 7. We don't have any school board, USD 497. We don't have any school board members up right now. But I point all this out also just to say that we don't have very much control over each other. We are working together as partners and in some cases neighbors. But I, as a city commissioner, have not much control over what the county does, even less control over the sheriff or the district attorney or the school district. So it behooves us to work together on any number of projects, but in terms of funding or authority, the city doesn't have that. One thing I didn't put on here that I would add, just sometimes we get questions about KU. KU belongs to the state. It's a state function. Their land is their own. Their sidewalks are their own. We don't have much control over that. The Register of Deeds, again, something that might pop up on your ballot someday. A lot of people never have occasion to deal with the Register of Deeds, but if you do, it's very important that they be good at their job. The treasurer, obviously, if you've ever written a check for your taxes, you probably know who that is. And the county clerk, who is responsible for making sure that all of our votes count, and they do a very good job. So let me go back and make sure I got all my points here. I think the city, we tend to get a lot of attention because we have a forum that a lot of people find approachable. So we have a public comment, and we've been televised for a long time, so people tend to come to us, I think, because we're approachable and accessible, and some of the other, the county and the school board maybe seem more remote to people. I think lately, because of COVID, everyone's become counties televised now. County also meets at kind of a strange time. They meet at 4 o'clock. And so I think that it has been a hardship for people to be a watchdog for that group. But I think now that everything's televised, everything's on Zoom now, I think we're going to hopefully find that a lot more people will be engaged in those parts of the system. I did want to talk a second. I don't think I said there's 5 city commissioners. We do have a mayor, but we take turns. So in about 16 months, we'll have another election, and 3 commissioners will be reelected, or there'll be an election for them. And they have just agreed, as part of our tradition, that the next most experienced person, or the next longest person there, the next person with the most votes gets to be mayor next. So right now, Jennifer Ananda is mayor. Next year, according to tradition, Brad Finkeldye will be mayor. That's a little strange. I know some people find it confusing that we don't have an elected mayor, and certainly that's a discussion we've had in the past, whether Lawrence needs to change its form of government to a strong mayor form, or change the way the city commissioners are elected. We just need people to engage us on that and have some public discussion of whether we think Lawrence is ready for that. What else did I want to mention to you all? And people ask me these things all the time. Probably a lot of you are already engaged, so I might already be telling you things you don't know, but these are kind of pieces of advice I give people. Obviously, join League of Women Voters, first thing. The next thing I would say is choose a subject, right? City, county, state, or federal, because you can lose your mind paying attention to all this stuff all the time. I have a very hard time dealing with what's happening at the federal level, but I feel like I can affect something locally. That's why I have learned specifically about how the city works. A lot of other people may live out in the county, or their jobs have something more to do with the responsibilities of the county. Great. You can be the person that has given us the book reports on that. Or I have a friend who specifically pays attention to state. Good, because it makes me want to take a nap, and I need someone to give me a solid book report on what's happening in the state house every time. So I guess I think for my sanity, that's a piece of advice I give. Pick one thing. Now, you're going to get knowledge about how these things all interwork after time, but having a little bit of focus, I think, helps you keep your sanity. And I might be whistling Dixie with this, but people just start watching meetings. Just start watching city commission meetings. You can do it at home. You can do it in your jammies. You don't need to leave the house even anymore. Or county, or the school board. I think they're meeting right now. In fact, they're probably our competition in this time slot. And, I've even seen people, kind of make it into a game, make it something fun. I know some friends of mine made it into a drinking game. So any keyword you heard during the course of the meeting, you would take a drink. Anything that keeps people involved, as far as I'm concerned, and paying attention every week or every month, because you can't just focus on your one topic. You have to learn about everything. And for me, when I started going to meetings, it was almost like I had to know how it ended. If I saw them talking about one topic, I wanted to come back the next week and find out how it ended. So I think if people would think of it that way, as something entertaining, we could get a lot more people involved. And I think you really should just make it part of your routine to be watching these meetings. The next thing I would suggest is, make a friend everywhere you go. It's a little harder on Zoom, but I think you could do it. Every time I went to a meeting, I just made a promise to myself to meet one new person and find out what their interest was and find out what their focus was. And then I would have another contact. If I had questions that, someone else who's going to these meetings is going to have a lot more knowledge. The next thing, again, I would say, don't be afraid to say yes, because as soon as people see you being engaged, being involved, having any kind of organization skills at all, they're going to want you to join their board, and that's good. I'll show you here a list of city advisory boards that we have. We need people on them all the time, let alone organizations like League of Women Voters or Lawrence Association of Neighborhoods or any of the other organizations, social organizations that are trying to affect change here locally. All of them need help. And then also, don't be afraid to say no, because it's very easy to say yes to 3 or 4 boards and then get overwhelmed. So just know what you can do, what you think you can do. So I want to show you this right here. I think what might be a good idea is for me to send a list of links to Kate, and then can email everyone if they need any of these. But these are all and there's almost 40 of them, I think, advisory boards at the city level, although some of them are combination city and county boards. And they're a very good way to get involved and learn and make a contribution. And we need a lot of help with these. I started out with kind of an easy one, just so I could get the rhythm of meetings. I find that meetings have their own rhythm, and that once you understand how that works, then your ability to think in those meetings is greatly enhanced. So there's some extremely important boards here. Lawrence Douglas County Metropolitan Planning Commission. They meet a lot, and they make a lot of decisions about how our city is going to look and feel. And I think a lot of people should be paying a lot more attention to what goes on there. And honestly, sometimes they meet more often than City Commission does. And then there, are easier things like transient guest tax was the first one I joined. It was a brand new board. So I also got to see how a board is started and how they create their priorities. They had a finite amount of money that they were trying to give away, and that was a really good entry point. So I think also thinking about what kind of boards you might want to join, think about where your blind spots are, and like I said, what your capacity is. The other thing, so I was saying, make friends. Obviously, I recommended Porter as your city friend. In my personal experience, all the city commissioners and all the county commissioners and all the school board commissioners are very accessible. I personally like it when people call me. We get emails all the time, but I always would like to see someone's face or hear someone's voice and make a real connection. I know maybe I'm a little old school for that, but I think it makes a difference. And I think you should try to meet all of them if you can. There's no reason not to. All of them are accessible. All of them want to hear from you, in my experience. The other thing I think about, aside from not being afraid to say yes and not being afraid to say no, is also, if you have an issue, don't take no for an answer. Keep climbing. Wherever you start, whatever your issue is, keep climbing. Be polite, but don't give up. And I think that's what happens. A lot of people become discouraged because the system's complicated. As I've shown you, there's a lot of players. But don't give up. Any one of us, I think, is accessible and wants to help you be successful in finding a solution. So I think those are the most important things I've learned. I maybe didn't talk as long as I thought I might, but I want to go ahead and turn it back to Tracy if she wants to ask any questions or show me the questions from the crowd.
Sorry, hopefully everyone can see there's a Q&A box there at the bottom of your screen and the little black box pops up. If you have questions, go ahead and put them there, and then Kate or I will ask them of Courtney. One thing that I wanted to ask while we're waiting for questions to come in is regarding the various advisory boards. I know recently I've personally seen a lot of people on social media, Facebook specifically, who have encouraged people, put that website out there to encourage folks to apply to these advisory boards. What's the typical turnaround? Because I know I've personally also applied for several different advisory boards. What's the typical turnaround for people to hear back from them, whether or not, I mean, maybe I don't know if that's an answer that I can get directly from you, or if you can direct me to who to ask, but just a turnaround there.
Yeah, I think that some of that might depend on the mayor. Some of that might depend on the board and kind of its year, how it plans or how it budgets. I will give some advice though. So if you want to be on an advisory board, I showed you that webpage. Click on the one that you are interested in. Hold on here if I can get it back. Click on the one you're interested in. Way at the bottom, there's a link. I'll pick one. If it'll let me. There's a link. It's a very short form you fill out. You've probably filled it out several times, Tracy. But what I would suggest is there's kind of an open box where you might make comments. In the past, I've written a letter and put the letter in there, or I've just given kind of what I thought were my qualifications. But I also email or call the mayor and say, I am asking to be appointed. I just wanted to let you know that I applied online, and in my experience, they're happy to hear about that. It just was maybe because I think some of this stuff online maybe takes a few days to get to them. It was just easy for me to contact them and say that. So that's a little piece of advice. We can also just email them and say, hey, I filled out the form and I want you to know my qualifications. You can do that also.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. We've got some questions coming in. So we've got a few about advisory boards. I did want to come up to the first question that we got, which was, which officials would have the power to start changing the voting system that we use in Douglas County?
What do you mean by voting system?
I can ask. We can ask for a follow-up.
You don't know? Okay. If you mean how the city, for example, if we wanted to have a different form of government than move to a strong mayor system, that's us. We would have to start that conversation. We would have to make that an action item and start a lot, in my opinion, of community discussion, because there's a few options we could do. If you mean like expanding mail-in ballots or anything like that, that's Jamie Shue. That's the county clerk, and you might have to ask him if that's. I'll give you an example. I know there's some. Now I'm not going to remember what it's called, but there's some talk about when you vote and there you get the second place, third place, first place, second place, third place. If someone's going to know what I'm talking about. There's been some discussion about that. My understanding is that Kansas stops us from doing that, but Jamie Shue at the county clerk's office would be the person to tell you for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we have another question. This one's from Caitlin. How do you find out what each advisory board does or is responsible for? Is that on the website? Which I believe it is.
Yeah. So here I click on, hopefully you guys can still see this. I clicked on Historic Resources Commission, And right here at the top, it says what it does. It'll also show you right here any open spaces or when an open space is going to open up. And it also shows you who's on there. So that's actually good too, because you could call one of them and say, hey, I was wondering about how you feel about your position on this board, or at the bottom, usually they show the staff person. So you can call the staff person, ask them questions also. And yeah, you ask people what their experience is. I would also say a lot of these things, I can't think of very many that aren't recorded anymore, at least at the city level. We record almost everything. And you can find the videos online. So if you just want to go and just watch a meeting and just pick an old meeting and watch it and see what happens, that's a good way to learn. Or look when the next meeting is and watch that. Yeah, recent meetings.
There's a question,
So,
a follow-up question to that, is where those are, where are all those links? So the city commission meetings, the county, where's a good place to find those meetings, so that you can either watch them or join them via Zoom?
yeah. So my computer just knows that I want to see City of Lawrence all the time. So I type in City of Lawrence, City Commission, and then it'll give you kind of this this right here. This is kind of what it looks like. And then you can pick, here, I'll go back if it'll let me. You can pick any one of these advisory boards. It'll show you videos, if there's old videos. They'll show you the old agendas. You want to look at the old agendas. City Commission, I always just put in City of Lawrence City Commission, and it pops up because it's actually kind of in another space. But I don't see the link on this here. And it'll show you the most current agendas, the next few weeks. If you want to, so it used to be, of course, when we were all allowed to go out in public, that you could just go to City Commission anytime you wanted and make your 3-minute comment during public comment. That's one thing that makes the city pretty accessible. With the Zoom situation, not being able to do that exactly, we have moved to general public comment anyway, being written email, and then at the beginning when we do the public comment, the mayor reads the names of the people and a general kind of description of what they talk about, so that, and then we of course get a copy. And then if one of your issues is on the general agenda, you can make comment. You just have to let the city clerk know in advance, or the city manager's assistant know in advance, so she can send you the link to get in. Hope I covered all of your questions there.
Yeah. Okay, so back to advisory boards. So I believe you said that you can tell when an advisory board needs members from, there was a list of openings, I think, and we can provide that after this. We'll have a list of some links and resources that we'll post. You can tell that way, correct? Is from that larger website. Okay. And how are those boards formed? And are the numbers of members limited? I know some require kind of representatives from different agencies or different facets. So could you talk a little bit more about that?
Right. And yeah, each board will delineate what the qualifications are. So let's say if you're on transient gas tax, there's usually, I've noticed with most boards, there's at least 2 members at large. So maybe you don't belong to any particular organization, but you could still get on. But then that board requires someone from the hotel industry, someone from travel industry, things that are relevant to that board, or like affordable housing, AHAB. it requires people that are from nonprofit organizations that have experience with that. And I think it does have members at large. I think members at large are really important. For a lot of the boards, I think it's important for just the regular old everyday taxpayer to have access to and input on what kind of decisions are made. But a lot of times those people do have old experience. They may not have current experience, but they may have former experience. And that is always helpful.
Great. And who chooses the members? Is that always
So
the mayor?
Yeah, it's the mayor doesn't get to do a lot on their own, but one thing they do get to do is appoint people to boards. But I do want to qualify that the recommendations do come to the city commission, and even though they might make the recommendation, we all approve it. And I would say, in my experience, that the mayor is absolutely open. The mayors I've experienced have been open to hearing suggestions from other commissioners if they can't, having a hard time filling a space, but another commissioner knows somebody. They are open to hearing those suggestions.
So just reach out to people if you're interested. It's generally a safe bet.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have a question. Do city commissioners struggle to find time needed to be as effective or impactful as they would like? And do you think higher salaries would remedy this issue?
So they did give themselves a raise. I wasn't on when they did it, but they did give themselves a raise last year. Before that, I think they made $8,000, and now I think they make 18 or 19, I forget. And that was a discussion had in the community for a long time, that it was hard to attract people who weren't retired or own their own business, basically who had a lot of privilege and didn't need to worry about money. And I think that was very valid. And I think that's why they moved to give themselves kind of a big raise in 1 year, was that hopefully in the future it would attract people, because it really is quite a lot of work. It's a lot of people, it's a lot of emails, it's a lot of research. If you've ever looked at an agenda, also sometimes, I'll tell you, last week we were there till 1:30 in the morning. It's a commitment. It's a time commitment, certainly.
Thank you. We had a comment from the chat. My dear friend Claire suggested that you can view the videos on YouTube of the commission meetings and things like that. So City of Lawrence YouTube page, just so everybody knows, is a good space to watch. We do have time for a couple more questions. I had a question. So for just to kind of clear up some of the city versus county things, could you explain just a little bit about like what some of the questions that would be appropriate for county would be, like if some examples of things that you would contact them about?
So I think that's also maybe one of the reasons that county doesn't get very much attention, because to a certain extent, funding flows through the county, and in some ways they don't have, they do have control over some kind of funding options, but then in some ways they're kind of guided by what the state of Kansas tells them to do. So like all of these people I was showing you, register of deeds, treasurer, county clerk, even though the sheriff, even though they're elected separately, their funding comes from the county. So if you think about city commissioners as needing to put political pressure on them, there's kind of, you can come to city commission and embarrass us, I guess, if you want to, but there's always the next election. And, you know, the sheriff, for example, doesn't have a public forum every week where you can come and make a statement. The county has only recently, because of COVID, been televised and more accessible to people. They do kind of have public comment, but I think they have a little bit more control over it than we do. Obviously, the Register of Deeds, he doesn't have an open meeting he has to go to every week and tell people what he's doing. So I just think that when we think about these groups, they have different kinds of accountability, and the political pressure on them is very different than it is for City Commission. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
It does really help, yeah. And just from your experience, would you say just contacting them through email or through phone, just kind of, like you said, just not taking no for an answer and just kind of continually reaching out is pretty much the best thing to do?
Yeah, I find the county commissioners to have always been accessible. I have spoken to all but one of the school board members, I think. Again, very accessible. I don't know the treasurer, but I think I've talked to almost all of these people at some time or another. Email is about what you're comfortable with. Like I said, I like to hear from people. I like to see people's face. I need to look in their eyes so I can find out who they are. That's meaningful to me. Other people are fine with email. Just send an email. They'll know who I am. They'll understand what I'm about. That's about your comfort level. But I think, in my experience, everyone at the local level has been very accessible, and don't be afraid. I think sometimes people feel like we don't all put our underwear on 1 foot at a time. Like, they're all our neighbors and we're all trying to get to the same place. So like I said, I have just found everyone to be good at calling back, emailing back. Happy to meet you for socially distanced coffee. Don't be afraid to do it. Do it. Get in there. Meet them. There's no reason not to. They're your neighbor as much as your next door neighbor is.
So a kind of a follow-up question on that, and this is maybe just kind of an opinion. How would we as a community go about getting regular standardized sheriff public forums and public comment periods set out? So who would you advise we ask to kind of institute that? Would that be a sheriff thing or a county thing?
I'm sure that would be a sheriff thing. They're, as far as I can understand, only accountable to the voter. So you guys are getting ready to vote right now. Maybe that's a question you should ask the candidates.
Right. We have another opinion question if you'd like one.
That's okay.
Tracy, you want to ask this one?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't see it pop up. Do you, Courtney, have an opinion on the idea of a stronger mayor? Is the question specifically?
I'm interested in the discussion. I have concerns about it that I think can be addressed. So one of my concerns about a strong mayor system would be what probably anyone in a big city would be, which is that someone very powerful or possibly corrupt would become entrenched and they would be difficult to move. But I think the people I talk to say that's easily diminished. So I just think it's something we should have a real involved community discussion about, which only Lawrence can do. We all like to give our 3-minute opinion, and I have every confidence that everyone will show up. Another option that was suggested was, so right now, rather than running against each other, so let's say in the next election, 3 commissioners would have to run against each other to keep their own seat. Then instead of doing, because as you can imagine, that creates a problem if some of them get in, because they might have said or done things during the campaign trail that might have created some bristling feelings. So rather than doing it that way, having a first position seat, a second position seat, and a third position seat, and then people run in those positions. That way you're not running against someone you might be trying to work with. That's an interesting idea to me. And I think that's interesting.
Is that
So
similar?
I think there's a, go ahead.
Is that similar to the county commission districts where we'd have, like, you're voting on District 2 or 3, or is that what you mean?
That's not my understanding. That's another question people have asked about maybe making, they don't call it districts, they call it something else, but like having aldermen of a certain area. I'm concerned about that too, because I don't all the way understand then how do you jockey for resources in just your district? So like Chicago's a good example, right? They have aldermen in districts. So it seems to me like they fight over resources. So rather than working together for the whole, they're working against each other for money. And I'm not closing my mind to it. I just want to make sure that that isn't what would happen.
That makes sense. All right. Any other questions? We've got a little bit more time. I will say that this has been wonderful, Courtney. Thank you so much. And thank you, Tracy, for co-facilitating. We will be having, it's once a month. It's the last Monday of the month. Will be the Civic Engagement 101 series brought to you by the Lawrence Public Library and the League of Women Voters of Lawrence and Douglas County. We will have different topics. This is kind of local government at a glance. And so we've looked at different facets of local government and how they kind of answer to each other, have different purviews, and then we'll be exploring other topics in the future. So if you have other ideas for some of these other discussions, just please let us know. Oh, we've got a couple more questions. And one of them is like my favorite, so I'm going to call dibs. Could you tell us a little bit about the role of the precinct committee people? Precinct committee chairman and woman.
Not particularly, no. I have to admit that's a blind spot for me. I have not been particularly involved with any particular party. I have an affiliation, but at the city level, you don't have to be a Republican or a Democrat, and so I haven't focused on that a lot. So I apologize for not being able to answer that very well. I will say I encourage people to do it because I do think it's important. From my friends that do it and have been doing it for years, they really believe that it's an important role.
I can do a quick what I know is just that. So within each party, there's a precinct committee chairman and woman, and that language is very questionable. So within each party, what those people do is they work to get out the vote among the people in their precinct, and the precinct would just be kind of like the small sort of neighborhood where you live. So it's very, very, very hyper local. And they are tasked with getting out information, telling people about deadlines for registering to vote and for getting advance ballots and things like that. So that's kind of like your very, very hyper local voting cheerleader, more or less, for getting information out to your neighborhood. So, and that's an elected or write-in position. So. Tracy, it's all you.
Yep. There's one more question. It's two questions, but it's from one person. How do you suggest those facing structural barriers get engaged and go about getting engaged? That's the first question. And then the second question, if you want to answer that, and then I guess they what additional plans are in place to make Lawrence politics progressively more accessible?
I think, so one of the things we kind of already mentioned, which is paying people to do the work. And that's also something I've suggested with advisory boards. That's volunteer work. in my opinion, in my experience as a woman of color, it is difficult to ask people of color to do that work for free when they've already been doing a lot of work for free, when the whole country's been built on their back, and then they also want them to volunteer to give time to a system that frankly isn't accessible to them. So that's a couple of things. My experience also with other people of color is that because the system isn't accessible to them, they just don't find interest in it. So I don't, other than to say, you know, as a woman of color, that's why I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to make that space. I'm trying to push for that stuff. I'm trying to find those avenues. I don't know how to make other people care about something that isn't valuable to them. I want to encourage people to do that, but I also understand why it's not. I understand 100%. Nobody wants to sit in 2-hour meetings about stuff that doesn't affect them and feel like they didn't move anything forward. I understand that. This is something we're talking about a lot at City Commission. Again, I hope people watch our meetings sometimes because those are questions we ask all the time. We're, trying to hire an inclusivity director, someone can help us figure out what we're not doing or how to attract different voices. And that's just going to be an ongoing conversation. If you've got great ideas, I'm listening. Whoever asked that question. But all I can do in my position is look for ideas and acknowledge the reasons why it's not attractive. I absolutely understand why it's not. I feel it sometimes too.
Do you find that with the meetings being online and having them be where you can watch the recording later a little bit easier or be able to kind of participate, not necessarily in the real time, do you find that engagement is increasing?
Well, yeah, depending on the topic, we can look and see who all's watching, what our views are, or even different times during the video, figure out who's interested in what. I certainly, over the last 4 or 5 years, have known people who have made it more of a habit. I mean, also, if you think about, it's not really different than a podcast. We listen to podcasts all day at work. It's something that could kind of be happening in the background, and you can be doing other things. And again, over the course of a year, what you could learn, just by listening to that for an hour a week, would be an incredible asset to the community if you can get engaged with all that knowledge.
Thank you. All right. Well, if we don't have any other questions, this was a wonderful group of questions. Thank you all. And again, we will be posting the video on the Facebook event, and then both the library and the League of Open Voters will be sharing this video. Oh, actually, we've got one more question. Sorry about that. Asking, I don't know if this is the right place to ask, but the person is fuzzy on the county positions, and so where would you recommend getting more information about those specific county positions?
On the county website. There's 3 commissioners. There's 3 districts that they represent. It's kind of an interesting lines if you look at it. I think it's okay though, because it kind of splits Lawrence up a little bit, and maybe, like I said, sometimes we tend to be a little bit Lawrence centric. And I think by drawing the lines the way they have them, we haven't messed with them in a long time. County, the state messes around all the time, but the county hasn't messed around in a while with gerrymandering and all that. So it kind of splits Lawrence up in a way I think that gives a little more balance to people who live in rural areas that maybe would not be represented otherwise. And as I said, you, other than just looking it up online and seeing what else they do, you can always just call them. All three of them are very approachable. You guys are, have an election coming up. We don't know what'll happen, but my impression of everyone running is that they will also be very accessible. So I don't have any impression that that's going to change. And, we all work together. Like, in theory, we're all trying to get to the same place. There's 100,000 people that live in Lawrence and about 23 to 25,000 people that live out in the county, Eudora, Baldwin, and those townships I showed you. We still share resources, so it's only benefits us if we work together. So, yeah, county seems a little nebulous to me too sometimes, but you can always just, like I said, make a friend. There's three of them. They're not hard to get, and learn who they are and meet with them every 2 months. Make it a habit. They're happy to hear from you, in my experience, like I said.
All right, we've got a suggestion from the audience to go to vote411.org to find county candidate answers to some of the questions on issues. Vote411.org should have some information. There's also the Journal World has put together a series of press on the people who are running for county office and also the other offices. Also, the shout out to the library. We can help you find resources. Another question is, so city officials, would you say, this person was asking about whether or not you work for the homeless population as well, or is it just for taxpayers or people who live in homes?
I feel like I represent everyone. I have to. So that includes people I don't agree with. And just to clarify, there are some people out there I don't agree with. There's kind of a political issue about the houselessness in Douglas County that I'm not going to approach because we want this to be not in that space. But I guess all I would say about that is I feel like that is about partnerships with the city and the county and our nonprofit organizations and optimizing that. I think that's probably the safest thing I can say without getting into or getting on a soapbox about it. I cannot speak for the other four commissioners. I, as also a taxpayer and also a voter, all I can do is look at what they vote for and what they say and what they do with their actions and what they do with their personal time. And it's my responsibility as a voter to know where they are on that. And that is probably the strongest thing that I'm going to say. I cannot speak for my other commissioners, but I feel like I have to represent everyone.
Just to clarify really quickly, kind of going backwards here just a smidge, commissioners run nonpartisan, correct?
Yeah, I said
City
that.
commissioners, yeah.
Right.
I don't think we addressed that, and I think it's kind of important to note that the library and the league, you, as a city commissioner, you also are a nonpartisan member of the community trying to just do better, whatever that looks like for your community. So, yeah.
Great point. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you all so much. We'll post this video, we'll post some helpful links, and you are all welcome and invited to come to next month's talk on the topic to be determined. Please let us know if there's anything specific that you want to hear about in terms of.
also talk about double checking your status for
Yes.
your ballot. Tomorrow is the last day, I believe. Well, it is, not I believe, it is. Tomorrow is the last day for you to register to get a mail-in ballot for the August 4th primary, right? It's August 4th, right? I already did mine, so I'm losing it. So for the August 4th primary. So if you don't, want to go directly to the polls, and you can do that on kansasvotes.org. So make sure you do.
And the August 4th primary is a huge deal. So
Yeah.
we all nonpartisanly implore you to please vote. It's very important for local elections, for whomever you're voting for. We just want you to get out there and vote, please.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Tracy. And thank you all for being here, and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you guys again.
Good to see you.